Okay, welcome everybody. I'm excited to introduce Ranjan, who's going to be speaking with us from Adore Me. He's the VP of strategy there, leading their work related to innovation and sustainability initiatives. And he's going to be speaking with us today about personalized customer journeys in the age of generative AI. Ranjan?
All right. Thank you, Monty. How are you doing? I'm Ranjan Roy. And as Monty said, I lead innovation efforts, sustainability efforts at Adore Me, and generative AI is specifically something that I have worked on in different capacities for a number of years. But I wanted to start really thinking through and talking through two of the experiences that have blown my mind recently. First is the My DJ feature from Spotify, and the other is the voice feature from ChatGPT available on their mobile app. Both of these, in a way, capture underlying machine learning recommendation and kind of more traditional recommendation with a generative layer. The Spotify experience, it really takes, we're all familiar with Spotify knows what you like, it recommends the right songs, but then adds this generative layer in a real DJ's voice, telling you why this is picked, why you should like it, some more information. So that's really been one of the drivers around how we've thought about, what's the dream experience we want to give to customers. So for very quick background, for those unfamiliar with Adore Me, we were the first intimates brand to bring inclusive sizing across our entire range back in 2013. We're a proudly mass market brand, digitally native. We're the first lingerie brand to be B Corp certified in the US, and we were acquired by Victoria's Secret 1 year ago. And we were also very early in generative AI. So what happened is I had actually previously worked running a startup around news personalization. And in doing that, had done a lot of work with more old school natural language processing and a little bit of natural language generation, but as bad as it was circa 2015-16. But when GPT-3 first launched, available via API in October 2021, we started going ahead and really working with generative AI. We worked with a company called Writer as well, writer.com, and they've really helped push us on this journey. And we've already operationalized a number of efforts, and we're going to talk about a few of those today. But one of the things that I bring up, in the past, I was a trader, and why I think on Wall Street, and why that is relevant, and I always think about that, is generative AI for me is a exercise in risk management. The more you bring it into your organization, the more you operationalize it, the more you push it and come up with different efforts and products, everything is about risk management and thinking about where can we take chances, what kind of risks do they present for us, for our customers, of good content being created, of really bad content being created, and really thinking through, because you need to get started, you need to push as fast as possible, but do it in a thoughtful way. And the other way we think about this is, where is there high revenue risk versus low revenue risk, and what kind of data is in content is unstructured and what is structured. So we started with product descriptions as our first real test, because it's a very structured piece of content, but also the revenue risk is relatively low. Again, product descriptions typically for an e-commerce company help in conversion rates, but don't necessarily make or break that sale, versus email is a huge driver of revenue for us. So getting an email subject line wrong, making it bad, degrading the quality of it is something that we were much more careful around. But even there, we started doing more experimentation in the space. But really thinking through, again, going back to risk as the underlying kind of theme of this entire talk, there's revenue risk, there's structured data risk of, will this come out as good content, and is there the underlying data that's good enough? So home try-on, Adore Me, we have two main home try-on lines, but people are familiar with this model. Stitch Fix kind of really brought it to the forefront. You receive a box, there's a number of items, you keep what you want, send the rest back. So convenience has always been, one of the most valuable parts of this, but that personalization and that discovery element of it really are one of the key selling points. And when you think about it, that's where AI is already underlying all of that recommendation, but that's even more where generative AI presents this really cool opportunity to really bring magic to the overall experience, to create content, to create text, images, voice, video, who knows where this can go, but make shopping at home something that feels magical, that feels like a completely new experience. So that's where we want to go. That's where the goal to really get to is. So again, you receive a box, it's cool, you keep what you want, send the rest back. But under the hood, very complex system, again, to get the right products to the right customers that they will have a high probability of keeping is a very complex thing. So first, Daily Look is part of the overall Adore Me family. They are a home try-on business that does primarily apparel. But the unique thing about Daily Look that is there is a human in the loop. There is a person who is part of the styling process. They interact with the customer, they choose the products, and they actually write a note in every box, and it gets printed. So where this effort started was this 200 to 300 word note would be written from scratch every time after the stylist had chosen what products to include in the box. So you can imagine doing that 8-10 times a day. That's a lot. So we really started to think with, okay, what are these notes? What do they look like? So again, you can imagine there's pretty typical things. Seasonality is a big thing given its apparel. So it's winter, it's summer, where do you live? What type of things will you be wearing is always something that's communicated. The user will often give feedback to the stylist, that's communicated. So recognizing that. And the most interesting part and the most valuable part that we've seen is the pairings are really the key to the Daily Look experience, is that because the Daily Look really is about an entire outfits that can be created. So, these pants go with this blouse, this skirt goes with this shirt. That's really where a lot of the magic happens. So we tried to train, we took thousands of historical notes, and there was some weirdness. This is always keep this screenshot. One of them, when we were testing out kind of what can this output content look like, person said, or not the person, the AI wrote, I've been so busy with the launch of my new website and getting everything set up. It made no sense. It was a complete hallucination. And it reminded us that if we are going to start rolling this out, we needed to be much stricter around quality control, because the goal was getting this to where each stylist has this dashboard interface. So right now, and this is where we've gotten into, after the stylist has selected all the products, they hit ready, and it will push this first draft to them, and then they can update it however they want. So getting it pretty good, but also getting it so you don't have crazy language in there was clearly important. But then also what we started to realize is a traditional large language model actually wasn't getting the pairings right. Like there would be random stuff like this dress goes with this blazer, this blouse goes with this shirt, or things that maybe somewhere someone would actually wear together, but typically the pairings did not feel or were not right. So the way we started to think about this, and I think this is like one of the more important takeaways for us, is different problems, even from a content perspective, require different generative AI solutions. So the intro section that really talked about, what time of year is it? This is your fifth box. We say you can see whether they kept a lot of items from previous boxes. So injecting language like, we know you've been loving this service, or we could do a little better on this service. This kind of stuff we can do via a fine-tuned model. Then certain things can just be straightforward injection of language. If box 1 or 2, if it's the first box, everyone will receive this bit of text around a potential discount code. Then the pairing stuff gets interesting, because there we learned we can hard code an algorithm. Pants go with these type of product categories. Skirt goes with these type of product categories. Jacket goes with these, and hard code that in. And now the way it works is to create this first draft is the prompt is created by like this pant with this shirt, this blouse with this blazer. And then we pass it through a chat API to add that conversational element of it. And also, we've tested out a lot of different voices, and like fashionista, department store salesperson. That's something that's always kind of evolving and changing, but really trying to still capture some voice is also an interesting thing. But what this allows you to do is to be very flexible, because it's only at the final stage that it goes through a chat API that you can really get experimental on the chat side of it. And so the way we have been looking at this, again, time reduction, and we've seen stylists who are given an AI generated first draft, overall 38% reduction in time. So that we're very happy with. The other thing that we were really excited about was we have a similarity score score, which is basically how many characters from the AI generated first draft end up in the final draft. And it's something we don't want it to be 100%, because the goal is that the stylist is still spending some time on here, thinking through, looking through the note. And so overall, we see a little over a 40% similarity score, which we're very happy with, because that's up from 13% the first week we rolled this out months ago, when people were very skeptical of it. And then my favorite is over 30% of notes have a similarity score greater than 75%, meaning about 3/4 of the generated first draft end up in the note that was sent out. And to me, that's kind of the sweet spot, because it really means that someone is spending time, but then still adding a little bit of their own personal touch. So what we also found out, because there is a person in the loop, at first we were worried, how would this be accepted? Would people be uncomfortable with it? Would they be, again, the traditional change management issue around anything with generative AI? Are you going to be replacing me? But over time, you start to understand actually writing that note was one of the biggest pain points in the entire styling process. People like interacting with the customers one-off, they like styling the box, but writing the note was a huge pain point. So getting very qualitative, concrete feedback that people actually like this. There's a lot of debate around, do we just push this out to the stylists as their first draft when it's not perfect? And then realizing that over communication balances against quality and perfection on the output, meaning we were very over communicative with the stylist in terms of here's what's happening. Here are the things that aren't perfect right now. So you should keep an extra eye on. Again, the pairings, when they were first not great, we definitely said, make sure to keep an eye on the pairings. They're not perfect. So that trust is important. Then to me, the biggest learning from this project was to Gen AI or not Gen AI, the idea that not everything has to be generative AI. Again, we all kind of were living in the fantasy world to start with that you just feed a bunch of information into a large language model and then it just all works. That's not the case. So starting to think about what can, and actually I see the question here, what's the difference between algorithmic injection and LLM? According to, I'm going to read more according to my presentation. So this is kind of the center of this entire presentation. It's like what we call algorithmic injection can be one of two things. So going back here, because I think this is the most important part of this. So thank you for the question, Luis. Algorithmic injection can either be a very simple rules-based piece of text. Again, here, I would be delighted if you could say here's basically it was for box 1 or 2, here's a potential discount code. If you buy 3 pieces or more, you can receive 50% off the lowest price item. That is literally if box 1 include this text, if box 2. So it's about as, I don't want to say dumb as an algorithm as it gets, but you can, it's as simple. Then the other more complex, but we would still call algorithmic, is the pairings. So there's, it took a while to get that algorithm written, but it's still basically anything that's hard coded is kind of how we look at it, where there was very specific logic written into it. Because, and this is anyone who's thinking about generative AI, that's the big question. Because right now we have been working on this now for over 2 years. There was really, and probably were more idealistic to start, that it just solved all the problems and you just feed in some information and get a perfect prompt and everything works. That's not the case. So really thinking through what's hard coded and what's actually uses generative AI is important. 2 more questions I see here. So thank you for asking. I'll go through them quickly. Authenticity, is this a concern? I can imagine people reacting differently when they know something is mostly generated by AI than a human. So this is an interesting one because this is a pretty good use case, and that because there's still a person that they will be interacting with. So it's not something where it's pretending to be a human in a sign, which gets into a whole host of ethical and potentially customer facing issues around. Again, if we and again, where the world goes in 5 to 10 years, who knows if we're only talking to avatars and AI generated whatever. But as of today, that's definitely a concern that we take seriously, is that knowing in this process that there's a person involved matters. But it's a good point in terms of it. And this comes up in a lot of other areas in the company that we have generative AI in some capacity. I mean, in the same way that if any of us are doing a presentation or writing something and you use ChatGPT to give you that first draft, does it change the nature of the content itself? Or would the end person, if you do a presentation for your boss and you wrote a bunch of it in ChatGPT, and are they going to look at you better or worse? So I think that's a very good question. I think that we, in marketing and relative to generative AI, I think this is something that's going to come up more and more. I think there's definitely going to be some brand mishaps along the way, and we're going to, there's, especially the more things get automated and purely automated without any oversight or human in the loop, I think there's definitely going to be issues. But I also think more and more I do believe there's going to be more and more relative comfort where it simply becomes about the quality of the content you're being served. That whether it's a person or an AI, it's just simply, I want to know why I should like the products in this box, and that's all I really care about. Other question from Caitlin: have you noticed if the AI notes have a positive or neutral impact on customers? Great question, because keep rate is what it's called. It's kind of the holy grail in any of these services. We have not seen any statistically significant difference in the keep rate. And I think it's important because to us, and when you think about what problems you want to solve with generative AI, there's kind of 2 ways to think about it. Either is it saving time in an existing process? And then the other is it creating some completely new experience that you never would have been able to using generative AI? If it's the first and it's about time saving, to me, then it becomes less important. As long as there's no negative impact, you're okay. Because again, the value is in saving time. Versus if it's a completely new experience and clearly like the actual outcome and output, I think start to matter more. So I'm just going to end there. So thank you very much. Again, the main takeaways that if people take nothing else from this talk, it's that risk management is the most important way to approach thinking about generative AI. And then also, as someone who is completely obsessed with the area and thinks it's going to totally create the most magical new customer experiences, not everything needs to be generative AI. So when you think about these new experiences you want to build, being thoughtful around what should be and what should not be generative AI.
Great, thank you, Ranjan. Very interesting talk, and love the approach to taking a metrics-based perspective on how we evaluate whether to Gen AI or not to Gen AI, as you put it. All right, thank you, everybody.